Hey guys, Ash here with a quick news update on the Nintendo Switch as well as an overall look at the Switch's user interface. Okay, so this morning we got an unexpected bit of news from Nicalis, which is an indie developer and publisher known for publishing games like Cave Story and La Mulana on various Nintendo platforms like Wii, 3DS, Wii U, and so forth. So Nicalis this morning tweeted an image of the Switch's user interface that they have since deleted. We can glean a few interesting facts actually from that image, which of course, thanks to the internet, has been preserved fully. So the first thing we can really glean from this leaked image by Nicalis is that 1001 Spikes and Cave Story are both confirmed to be coming to the Switch. These are both indie games that made appearances on both Wii U and 3DS, but have not since been confirmed for Switch, but now they're confirmed for Switch. Now, there's also a game on the right edge of the screenshot that's cut off, and of course, thanks to the internet, again, we can now confirm that that game is actually Hydra Castle Labyrinth. And that comes to us courtesy of @LoadingTime on Twitter. Hydra Castle Labyrinth is a 2D adventure platformer by indie developer E. Hashimoto, aka Buster, who is a developer of other indie games, PC indie games such as Akuji the Demon and Guardian of Paradise. So this guy is a really celebrated indie developer in Japan. He's known for making PC freeware indie games that are generally well received, and so it seems like one of his latest is coming to Switch. So that's exciting. The other big takeaway for me from this leaked image by Nicalis is the fact that the Switch's UI seems to have some sort of night mode option, or at least some sort of color changing option, because in all of the screenshots we've seen or video we've seen of the Switch's UI thus far, the background is kind of like a light gray with dark text, whereas in this screenshot we see that the background is like a very dark gray, almost black, with light text overlaid on top of it, which typically is known as a night mode in other, devices. So it seems like there's either going to be a night mode or a color change option for the Switch's UI itself. There seems to be text along the bottom of the screen that's only active while the game is playing that lets you either change the active user in the Switch or close the software, which makes sense. This isn't too different from what we see with the Wii U, for example, where you can suspend a game anytime and close the game, obviously in the middle of gameplay. What's more interesting is that the change user button, and it seems like this kind of works in concert with something else that I'll get to later. It seems to suggest that there can be multiple users active at once on any given Switch, which is pretty interesting. We don't really know what that means in context or what that'll enable people to do with the Switch, but it does seem like there will be the option of having multiple users active in the Switch, much like the PS4. Finally, the one other thing I wanted to mention about this leaked image by Nicalis is the fact that the Game News button, the red button in that main row of 6 buttons on the Switch UI, it seems to have some sort of pending notification bubble above and to the right of it. So that seems to tell you at a glance if there's new notifications for you to read about any given game. So that's pretty standard stuff, but I thought it was worth noting. Now, I'd like to actually compare this leaked image to some of the prior images of the Switch UI that we've already seen, just to kind of give you guys an overall kind of overview of the Switch user interface and what it seems to allow you to do and the various options and things like that. So let's stop with the circle, or circles, in the top left corner of the screen, because I've actually noticed that there can be more than one. Now, at first glance, these circles seem to be kind of, I guess, for your user image or your avatar, or like a profile picture, and I do think that's what those are for. What's interesting, however, is that they are not all Miis. We have seen Miis, but they can be really anything, and not just Miis, which suggests to me that there are going to be custom profile pictures that you can either download or perhaps buy, who knows, but it does at the very least seem to not be limited to your Miis like your profile picture is on the Wii U, for example. So that's interesting. Also, I just want to point out that we have seen in screenshots that there can be more than one circle up here in the top left at once. It can be actually a row of circles. I believe I've seen up to 3. So what's interesting about that is that kind of follows up on what I said earlier about the change user text at the bottom of the screen while a game is being played. That all seems to suggest that there can be multiple users active at once on any given Switch. So I think that's pretty interesting. Now let's move to the top right corner of the screen where we see the clock, and we see the Wi-Fi or airplane mode indicator, depending on what mode your Switch is in, and the battery indicator. All pretty standard stuff, although I did want to point out that I have seen both a 12-hour and a 24-hour clock on these UI screenshots. So I don't know if that means there's an option that you can choose between 12-hour and 24-hour clocks, or if it's region-specific. I do want to point out that The 24-hour clock I saw was in a Japanese screenshot of the UI, whereas the 12-hour clock has been in all the English screenshots. So it may be a region-specific thing, or it may be an option. Who knows? I just thought it was something interesting to point out. So moving on to the bottom left, and the bottom left seems to show the current control configuration that is in use by whoever's playing the Switch. So I've seen both an icon of the Switch console itself, which seems to suggest the Switch is being played in handheld mode, as well as a Joy-Con icon with the player indicator. So I'm fairly certain that the bottom left really just shows whatever control configuration is currently active, at the current moment. So that pretty much sums that up. And then as well, or moving on to the bottom right, then we have generally just basic system information explaining basic button functions. So as we can see here, pretty standard, you press A to start, as well as you press plus and minus to bring up the options menu. Now we haven't seen that options menu, we don't know what options that'll bring up, but there are definitely more options than we have seen so far that they can be brought up by pressing plus or minus. And finally, this is the big thing, the buttons, the main row of 6 buttons from left to right, and I'm just going to go over those very quickly. So from left to right, starting from the left, the first button is News and Notifications, as I touched on earlier, and that's just going to tell you if there's any notifications that you need to read about any of the games you own every time you boot up the Switch. And you'll know, or at least I think you'll know, there's a new notification by the little circle above and to the right that we saw in the leaked screenshot by Nicalis this morning. So that's that. The second button is, of course, the eShop button. The eShop icon is unmistakable. That's going to take you to the eShop so you can buy all sorts of cool digital games. The third button is interesting. The third button is Album, and we know that from the Nintendo Switch presentation where we saw the official label as Album, but we don't really know what it's for. I mean, if I were to hazard a guess, I would say it's probably for screen captures or screenshots that you take while playing the Switch, because we don't really know anything yet about the Switch's sharing capabilities. So my guess is that the Album is for, it just collects all the screen caps that you collect while playing games. That's really all we know. That's really our own conjecture, but that's what we're going with for now. So the fourth button is controllers or Joy-Con pairing. I think it's just labeled controllers, but obviously that'll be the button you want when you want to, I guess, pair Joy-Cons or sync a Pro controller, or probably just pair or sync various controllers, various controller-related options. The fifth button is System Settings, so that's pretty standard. Go in there to change, all the kind of the deeper level stuff about your Switch. So System Settings, and then the last mode, the rightmost button, is Sleep Mode. So yeah, Sleep Mode is pretty self-explanatory. The Switch being a portable device, of course, is going to have a sleep mode. That's pretty much what that is. So I just want to make it very clear that the button 1, the leftmost button, that came from Google Translate. We translated that ourselves, the notifications button or news button. And the rest of the buttons, that all came from the Nintendo Switch presentation itself, so we can 100% confirm all of these buttons and at least what their labels are, if not their actual functionalities. So that pretty much wraps up my general overview of the Switch user interface. Of course, I just want to point out there is no Miiverse button, and that's not surprising. We got confirmation a few days ago, actually right after the Switch presentation itself, that the Switch would not be using Miiverse. So Miiverse does seem to be on its way out alongside the Wii U, which is a shame, but not all that surprising. One more point I want to touch on is that other screenshots, and we can confirm this ourselves from playing the Switch at the hands-on event in New York, but every time you dock or undock the Switch, you're going to have to press the L and R buttons on the controller you want to use before the game will resume. So essentially, when you dock or undock the Switch, the game will pause automatically and will wait for user input on whatever controller you want to then resume the game with. So I assume you never have to worry about a game not pausing when you dock or undock the Switch itself. So there's always going to be a system level kind of pause where you have to confirm, okay, I'm ready to play the game again, so you don't, lose a life or lose your progress or something like that. So really, that's about it. I would just end on the note that the Switch user interface seems to be somewhat reminiscent of the PlayStation 4 UI in general. Obviously, it's not a one-to-one comparison, and I'm not saying, Nintendo cribbed anything from Sony or anything, but the kind of the horizontally aligned row of block-shaped graphics showing each game, that is like standard PS4, and that definitely reminds me of the PS4's interface. And I'd say that's a good thing. I love the PS4's interface. So that's really what I'm going to end on. And thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on our various social media channels. You can find all the links you need in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on the Nintendo Switch and all things gaming. Take care, guys. Bye.